Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Josh of MitsuTimes. Today my guest is Ben Hochman. He is the owner and driver of the Black Zenith. I know you've seen it. It's the newest member of the 7 Second Club. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm glad that we get a chance to sit down and do this. I know we've both been running all over the country the last couple weeks, so I'm glad that we get to sit down and get this story told.
Yeah, it'll be a nice little break in the otherwise hectic schedule for me right now.
Yeah. I know racing off-season doesn't always mean off-season for the shops, though, huh? That's kind of the on-season.
No, definitely not. It's the time of year where we're trying to figure out what our plans are for next year, make those changes, get rid of, the excess pieces or parts there that we're not going to need or use so that we can stay lean and, of course, taking care of some of the bigger projects that are in the shop as well, along with events like PRI, which create a whole nother portfolio of to-dos for us to help not only meet with our partners and sometimes our sponsors in person, but also looking at new technologies and then following up accordingly after that event.
Yep. Seems work only increases during the off season.
Yes and no. For those, off project, or I should say, not in shop projects where we're working on actual cars and we're having to travel around, things tend to slow down a little bit this time of year in the holidays.
Well, good.
And we get caught up on our list, which is both, a double-edged sword. Or I guess it's good and bad, I should say, because we get caught up on our stuff. So it allows us to kind of reevaluate and reset a lot of things that we need to in the shop in order to be set up for the next wave that comes through.
Yeah.
But, it also means that we've got to find out what our next opportunity is to keep the ball rolling and stay lean and efficient around here.
Heck yeah. So Ben, why don't you talk us through the setup of the Black Zenith?
Sure. So the chassis itself is built entirely in-house. It's got a 25.3 certified NHRA cage in it, and that serves as obviously the foundation for the car. Now, moving on into the power plant itself, under the hood, everything is built within the core assembly. Is at the heart of this beast is the Boostin Performance spec long rod, aluminum long rod, short block, and everything is Demon spec on it. Devin has been in charge of building the engine on this car since it came to life, and the reason I've stuck with him is because the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
The head as well is done through Boostin Performance. It's running a Boostin Stage 3 CNC ported head. It's got GSC S3 cams and Kigley valve train. So it's got their race-only springs and retainers.
Okay.
And that's the core of this thing. And like I said, Devin and Boostin Performance have been in charge of the long block since day one. I'll talk more about my partnership and what we've done with this block, because they go way beyond just the engine of this vehicle.
Yeah.
But going over the overview of this thing and the specs on it, that's who's in charge of that. Backing that thing up is a PPG dog box that is also assembled in-house at Boostin Performance. And we've got the inline racing lockout shifter from Hoek Tran on the car as well. Moving on to the turbo kit, everything is built in-house, as I mentioned before. So We do the intercooler piping. We've got the Vibrant Performance HD clamps on it. Turbo kit itself, the manifold, the dumps, the downpipe. It pretty much changes every year because we change our configuration, which I know we'll talk more about in a bit. And so that's pretty much the core of that thing. Right now, the most latest turbo that we had on it was a Force Performance Custom 4580 that Robert put together for me last year based on our goal to hit in the 7 seconds and kind of what the recipe was that he and I had in mind in order to get there. And as far as fuel, the car is running on Ignite Red currently. The fuel system is a Aeromotive mechanical fuel pump. It's running Machine Concepts Racing billet bracket setup for it. And Magnus intake manifold. It's got our removable tube front end on it. All of our goodies. The quick release bumper setup on it. The whole front end of this car will come off virtually in minutes. Dang. Based on the way that we have the fasteners and stuff set up on it. Being a race car, you want things to be quickly, easily accessible. Yeah. And that's really the overall goal with the build when it comes to in and out with this motor and drivetrain, which it does, seasonally and sometimes throughout the season, just depending on how much track time it's seen.
Right.
And it's running some STM brakes and TE37 wheels. Right now we're running some ET drags for tires, and we've got all the drive shaft shop components on the drivetrain, axles, carbon drive shaft. Yeah, it works. And it is running a 3000 GT rear end that is built by John over at TRE.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty much, a good run through on the mechanical layout of the car. Yeah. And everything is orchestrated by Devin over at Boostin Performance and the dyno. Together, he and I have partnered up on this build. He's been my trusted advisor since day one, being that naturally new to the Evo platform. When I came into it, I didn't know anything about it. So when it came to aligning with someone that had a lot of experience, he was the first one that I gravitated towards. And over time, we've built a really strong friendship and partnership and bond. We've got a good system on how we do things, partnering up on customer builds, kind of putting our heads together and helping them reach their goals, whether it's, on a mechanical side, he's the expert, and tuning. And then I'm obviously the fabrication guy. So I can build you pretty much anything out of metal for chassis, turbo kit, the things that you need to tie things together on a lot of these projects that you'll just never find on a shelf.
Heck yeah.
But as far as the engine management side of things, it's Haltech Nexus. And, it's for the last year I've joked around about how ever since I've gotten on the Nexus, it's like just so bougie. Like that's, I feel like don't really have to do anything with it because I was on a switch panel before, which I do still have switches for this thing with the keypad, but I don't have to worry about forgetting to turn something on and off because it's all automated now.
Yeah. Yeah. The Nexus is just so nice.
Yeah. Yep. So, that's a pretty extensive overview of the layout on the car. There's a lot more that goes into putting these things together.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good summary of how the car sits.
Heck yeah. Well, Ben, you said you were new to the Evo platform. What was it that got you into the Evo platform in the first place?
When I first got my license, I gravitated towards the Subaru platform first.
Okay.
Because at the time it was like 2002, and I didn't just get my license in 2002. This was really my first new car in 2002.
Gotcha.
And that was, of course, when WRC and the WRX was a big deal. So it was coming over to us, and I was just fascinated with the all-wheel drive platform. So I first was a Subaru guy, and I actually built and raced one of those for many, many years. I first started out with 2.5 RS with a 50 shot of nitrous, and did a lot of bracket racing.
Okay.
And that's really what started and snowballed this racing hobby. And then got the STI, which we raced and held a lot of records in Colorado, racing at Bannerman Speedway for many years, and eventually even brought that back to Chicago. But that car ended up hitting the wall, literally, and did get rebuilt by a new owner. And like I said, it hit the wall. I decided to sell this thing after, being through so much with it and moving to Chicago after being in Colorado. I had a whole family of network resources out there that were not around.
Right.
And so it was kind of like a sign that I needed a new beginning, and decided to part ways with that platform. And I wasn't really necessarily going into the Evo platform or any platform for that matter. It was just, I needed to let that go. And I was a lost soul for a couple of months until I stumbled upon this car, which happened to be in my friend's parents' garage, just tucked in a corner.
Oh, wow.
It was like a new age barn find, as I've said many times before, because it had a ton of dust on it, and it was just tucked in a corner with a bunch of stuff piled on it. His mother was basically opening her door into it every day because she was parking next to it. So it was in, great shape considering it had so many low miles on it, but it needed a little bit of polishing on the surface. Okay. So that kind of, as soon as I saw that car, I had to have it. And the rest is history as far as that goes.
What was the car like when you got it, though, Ben? I mean, obviously it was, covered in dust and all that, but was it just pretty much a stock car? Was it a roller or what?
It was actually stuck in, like, the 2000s, man. It had a SAFC controller on it, a Defi boost gauge, and some basic bolt-ons. This is back when, this is probably one of the first Evos that AMS had roll through their property, which at the time was like, oh yeah, this car was one of the first Evos that came over. Damn. Based on its VIN number and the data on it. It's one of the first few that came overseas. At the time, think about like 2003 timeframe, eBay came out, and buying a car online was like, whoa, you can do that. So this kid's mom bought this car on eBay from a dealer in Atlanta. She flew out to Atlanta and drove it back to Chicago and gifted it to him when he first got it.
Dang.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been a long ride. The time that this car rolled through AMS's shop doors, which it had an AMS, basic tune on it, which was just an open ECU tune. And I'm sure at the time, I mean, they were like the shop that I was when I first opened at that time. I mean, there were like probably 2 or 3 bays. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about that. And it makes me feel old to think about that now, because that place is like a mecca. When you walk in their doors, they've got a shipping department that's the size of my facility.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah.
So, Ben, you were very successful with the Subarus. Did you have any goals in mind when you, finally took ownership of this car? Was you wanting to get back out there and pick up where you left off?
Honestly, I just wanted to have some fun with the car.
Okay.
I wasn't really trying to build a crazy race car at the time. Hitting the wall is an experience in itself. Yeah. And I wasn't in a position like I am today where, racing was still a big hobby. It wasn't a big part of, I didn't have a business at the time, and I hadn't been through where I am at this point. So I wasn't quite ready to just get right back on the track with the car. I just wanted to have something to tinker and enjoy and drive. I knew that at some point I was going to get it back on the track, and I was, nervous the first few times I went. But, just like as they say, you got to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
That's what happened, and of course the passion and the addiction of racing took over again, and here we are.
Just comes right back.
Yeah.
So Ben, do you think, looking back on that time in your life, that if you could go back, you would do it all over the same?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking back at where I am now and the decision that I had made to make the car and to a race car and start going back down that path.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those times where it's like, if you would have told me back then that we'd be here now, yeah, there's no way I would believe it. So you've got to, that puts a lot of faith in the future, and I wouldn't change anything at this point.
So Ben, you've definitely had some frustrated outings, just thinking back to the shootout this year. What is it that motivates you to keep going with this car when you could obviously jump to another platform?
Everybody has something in their life that they literally would love to do more than anything. It's just makes you happier than anything in the world. Aside from being with your kids, your family, from an experiential exhilaration standpoint, there is nothing in this world that is more exciting, and the sweetness is there's nothing that lasts as long as rowing a manual transmission down the track in a car like this.
Yeah.
So, there's other platforms out there that you can build to go into the speed, especially the newer platforms. In a manual transmission, though, however, very, very, very few and far between. And even in some cases, a lot of these guys are going auto.
Yeah.
But once you get these things down, and again, it goes back to, having somebody knowledgeable and a strategic partner like Devin and the Boostin team to set up the strain gauge on the dog box from PPG. I mean, there's just nothing like it.
I definitely understand that.
So there's a lot of craziness that you see going on out there between myself and people like Jason Flesher and Wild Evo and Rafe. You see us doing these crazy jobs where we're doing transmission and motor work in the pits, and you just can't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're insane in some ways, but this is what's driving it. It's just the exhilaration.
Yeah. It's what you got to do to get it done. This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Angry Arrow. Check out Angry Arrow's line of products for the DSM and Evo platforms. All Angry Arrow products use your choice of real gloss 2x2 twill carbon fiber or carbon fiber vinyl wrap. Angry Arrow products are designed to help reduce drag and rolling resistance on your DSM or Evo. The more aerodynamically stable your car is, the faster drag times will be at the track. Angry Arrow bumper shutters can increase trap speeds and stability in the quarter mile and have been tested to withstand speeds above 213 miles per hour. They are also great for daily driving use and can be kept on the car all year round. These shutters can withstand all weather conditions, sun, snow, and rain. Check them out on Facebook at Angry Arrow. So Ben, like I said earlier, you're the newest member of the 7-Second Club. I want to talk about what it took to run that 7-second pass because, you had a long time leading up to it, and it seemed like kind of out of nowhere, you just took a big swing at it and got it done. So I want to talk about the steps leading up to that 7-second pass.
Sure. Well, what it takes is a lot of resilience, let me tell you. Getting a car to one of these cars can hold a lot of power, and making the power isn't the issue. It's getting it down the track.
Yeah.
So, and once you get to a certain power level, it's not only getting it down the track, but managing that power efficiently and effectively. So drivetrain becomes a problem. And last year we had a lot of issues that were, electrical related. So that prevented us from really progressing the car as fast as we wanted to the prior year. And that really took a toll on me because, again, we're busting ourselves and we're investing ourselves, and our partners and our sponsors are investing themselves to see the car perform. And if it doesn't come together from one variable, then it's like an orchestra. Nothing works properly.
For sure.
So we had to kind of reset, get ourselves on a new engine management system, get things properly done with wiring, which we got a lot of help from Travis Yoler on. So shout out to Travis, and got things sorted out. Once we got the car actually running properly and making the power that it was set up for, this year we ran into a number of drivetrain issues. So, I mean, that was the main barrier for us to progress as quickly as, again, I would have liked to this year. I'm happy that we broke into sevens, and that was ultimately the goal. So there are no regrets in any of that.
Yeah.
But we would have got there sooner had we not had all those drivetrain issues. I mean, we broke two input shafts in like a matter of days.
Yeah.
And everybody seems to be gravitating towards these slipper clutches. We've got the Magnus slipper device on the car, and you've probably recall all of the people you've interviewed, and a lot of these people that are on the top of this list, from Devin to, Rafe and Wild Evo and Mirjan and the Yorkie Evo.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even outside of the Evo platform, people saying that this is what helped them be consistent and reach the goal that they've reached.
Yeah.
But it takes time to get it dialed in. So we were committed to that process. Now, I have a lot of seat time in an all-wheel drive car, both in the Subaru and the Mitsubishi Evo platform. So I've never really had an issue with 60 foot and getting off the line and drivetrain part issues, but I knew that everyone else that I was competing with and that I was talking with, that this was something that was a major factor for them. So after talking with Devin and making an educated decision, we went down this path this year, and we really were committed to, putting our faith in this process and the system and all that. And we have, everything to do it properly, and naturally working with people like Devin and having this set up on the car. It wasn't that there was anything set up wrong with it. It's just a totally different experience for me. You have to wait for what seems like ages for the 1-2 shift. And in a lot of cases, I just couldn't get like the harmony because I just have my own way of doing things. So the first day out the season, when we went out, we won 260 footed multiple times right off the bat. And we're seeing really good progression the first day. I think we made like 4 or 5 passes, and every pass we made, we cut off another 10th. And then we had knocked out a transfer case early on, like one of the first days out. Even prior to that, like we didn't even make it past the 60 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So I said at that point, even though that transfer case owed me nothing and it had so much time on it, there's a chance that it could have potentially been extended if I had something like a slipper on it, helping be more consistent and not put so much load on it. That just kind of went into the methodology of why we would move towards this.
Gotcha.
But ever since, I wasn't controlling the clutch off the line, we couldn't get it to 60 foot as fast as we wanted, as consistently as we wanted. And I was really struggling with the 1-2 shift. I kept just hitting the limiter too much. So long story short, we broke a bunch of stuff, as you saw, throughout the entire season. And I got not only fed up, not necessarily emotionally, but like confidence level. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me or the car or what's going on here. It just didn't feel right.
Gotcha.
So after putting everything back together again with new, fresh parts, I decided that I was going to turn this thing off. I just was going to go back to doing it with my left foot. And within 2 passes, we had the car hitting 260 foot again, and it ran a 7.
Wow.
So, I mean, everybody's different. Everybody has their own way of doing things. And I was committed to trying to go down a path that works well for a lot of other people. And I may find a point in this car where I have to depend on going towards that again, because I'm at a level, and, you know, the time frames for a lot of this stuff between shifting and, you know, it's just so small,
right,
that there's no margins left to be controlling it, because you have to focus on other things.
For sure.
But at this point, this is what's working best for me.
Okay.
So we're going to continue not to use that and just control it with our left foot and drive the car in a quote-unquote old school fashion. We still use the strain gauge, of course, but if I could do anything over again this season, it would be making that decision sooner, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could have definitely hit a 7 back at the shootout and avoided a lot of that headache, potentially even gone on to be more competitive in that class.
It's one of those hindsight 2020, I guess, on that case.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, maybe it was one of those things where you kind of had to learn to get to where you are, because, you know, I wanted to point out, Ben, that, you know, you were saying the 260 foots, you know, anybody listening, that would put, you know, that's, if you rank the Evo list by 60 foots, I think that would put Ben at like 3 or 4. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, you know, if we would have had more time, we could have probably, yeah, it's one of those things that I keep going back and forth on.
Right.
You know, and that's ultimately what prevented me from not doing it sooner, was because, you know, I have faith in the system and that it works properly. I just don't have the patience for it, especially when I'm seeing on paper different results for myself.
Yeah, I understand. So, Ben, you talked us through the changes it took to run a 7, but I want to talk about you personally. How did it feel seeing that 7-second slip for the first time?
I mean, it was quite a shock at first, of course, because, you know, thankful to my team. They weren't running towards me all excited. They played one on me, of course, acting all tough. The first thing they asked me is, you know, if I bogged off the line. It sounded like I bogged off the line, which of course put doubt in my mind. And it never feels like the pass when you're in the car.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, but very rare. And so yeah, when I looked down at the slip, finally, I was in shock.
That's awesome.
And then of course immediately emotional, because I'm an emotional guy. And when it comes down to big things like that you're like really pushing yourself for.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, you know, just hits you.
Yep. I mean, for me, it's nothing feels better than achieving your goal.
It's all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ben, I wanted to talk about what making a 7-second pass means to you, and why it's important to not just you, but your team and the car's future.
Well, I mean, it means everything, because like we were just talking about, you put everything, including, you know, what the team's put into this thing, from an investment level to a time level. I mean, there are times where I've committed to trying to make events or put time into the car that required me to make a decision on, you know, spending the time with my kids or getting that done. Yeah. And making an educated decision with the wife after having conversations. You know, we go one way or the other, and there's been times where we, you know, say let's go ahead and make this happen. So that's time I can't get back. And if we don't hit our goals, you know, those are things that we can handle with sponsors and with the business and whatever else, but I can't get that time back. So hitting these goals and making this stuff happen, it really means the world.
Yeah. So, Ben, what's the next goal?
This year, is about being on track. Because the last 2 years, we really haven't raced that much.
Yeah.
We've only been on track twice last year and twice, maybe 3 times this year, if I'm not mistaken. And the car reached the goal, and we're going to continue to progress that. But like you said, you asked me initially in this whole thing, what was the initial goal with the car? And it was to have fun.
Yeah.
So
get back to that goal.
We want to have fun, be on track. We want to be competitive. So we're going to set up the car to be competitive and be consistent. You know, trying to run a 7-second pass every single pass doesn't necessarily win races.
Right.
There's a time and a place for running 7s, and sometimes and some places require that during competition, but not every pass.
Mm-hmm.
Where every time we've gone out, we've had it, you know, I wouldn't say turned all the way up, but we've been trying to not be consistent, you know, but push the car forward continuously. And that's not only hard on the car, it's also hard on the team because we're always breaking things. The good thing is that we've gotten to where we are. And now that we're able to run 7s, we're really, really consistent at running low 8s. I mean, this thing can run low 8s all day very consistently and be reliable at that point because, you know, it's been pumping its heart out to do 8.0 or 8.1 over and over and over. And now that we have a recipe with the 60-foot and me back in driving, I'm confident that we should be able to run a lot more consistently at a low 8 level, high 7s, and even push it further into the 7s if we want to, without having to break our back every time.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like we're trying to shoot for the moon, you know, and push ourselves on this list. And that's fun, but we've got sponsors to keep happy. We've got partners that we want to progress and be happy and, you know, keep happy. And we also want to be out there more often. So we're going to continue to push the car and try and push ourselves down this list. Don't get me wrong, but that's not the number one priority this year.
Okay.
The number one priority this year is to try and get to as many events as we can.
Love that.
Go as many rounds as we can in competition, and hopefully bring home as much hardware as we can.
Hell yeah.
And then try and make it in this big show they call World Cup.
Yes.
Because that's something that I really would like to do. We just invested in a new enclosed trailer because, believe it or not, we've been traveling around with the car on an open trailer up until now. But, you know, that's part of the objective of setting the car up to go around just because we want to be able to travel and make sure we have everything that we need in order to be competitive out there.
Yeah.
And then if we can make it to World Cup, that would be, you know, the goal for this year. And then we can Hail Mary it towards the end of the season like everyone else does.
Yeah. You know, Ben, I kind of wanted to go back to what you were saying just a bit because, you know, if I've learned anything, the last couple shootouts, even World Cup finals this year, it wasn't the quickest who took it home. It was the most consistent that took it home. So
right.
I can understand what you're saying by, you know, yeah, running a 7 is great, but it's time to get down the consistency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like being an athlete and going to Colorado, right? They train in Colorado because they're just trying to put themselves in this, you know, crazy atmosphere where there's no oxygen and it's hard to breathe, so that when they come down to sea level and they're just jogging, it's like nothing to them.
Yeah.
So we're going to utilize that type of a training that we've gone through these last 3 years to get the car to where it is and be consistent in the mid to low 8s. And if it needs to go further than that, because it's further along in the competition and the competitor warrants it, you know, we'll turn it up. But we're not going to be Hail Marying every pass this year because it just doesn't make sense for us.
Yeah, I love it. So, Ben, I want to talk about what it took to be number 7 on this list, because obviously it didn't happen overnight. And I see a lot of people, I don't want to discourage anyone, but, you have an Evo, you're trying to get quicker and quicker, and your goal is a top 10, even though you're, running a high 9s, which is, an amazing feat in itself. But to get up to the top 10 on the Evo list is kind of like, stepping in the ring with Ali or Tyson or Fraser or something like that. So I want to talk about what it took for you to get on the top 7 of the EVO list.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, perseverance is number one, because it's not for the weak of heart, and it takes a village. Hats off to those guys that are doing this out of their garages. I know there's really not many, if any, that are actually doing this alone out of their garage, but you need a strategic partner and support, or at least an alignment. You need to pick somebody that has a lot of experience. Like I picked Devin and Boostin Performance. They're my number one strategic ally when it comes to this platform.
Yeah.
And my customers, for that matter. I mean, anything Ford G63 that comes through this door, if it's in his category, of work when it comes to mechanics or engine or whatever, he's handling it. It's going over to him. So you need somebody like Devin to help you out, because if you're trying to get that far on the list, you're going to need somebody that you can align with. And if you don't have the experience I have, myself included, someone that can help you fill the gaps of the build along the way.
Yeah.
Whether it be fabrication or picking the right turbo or setting up the oiling or the fueling system, you're going to want to work with somebody that has the experience to help set you down a path where that recipe works. Because there are a lot of recipes out there. There's more than one way to do this stuff. But if you work with somebody that has experience with what they have as a recipe working for a long period of time, like Devin does, and now like I can say I have, collectively with him and what I've done and built on top of what he's helped build as a core on this platform, then you're going to go through a lot of headache and expense that you really don't need to.
Right.
Because it's already been done.
Right. Stuff that it's already happened.
The people that you talk to in the network or online and forums, as you know, a lot of that information gets lost from ear to ear or mouth to mouth. It's just like if they line up a group of people and you say one sentence to the first person, and then they transfer what that sentence is through 10 people. By the time you get to the end of that line, that sentence is completely different.
Right.
Like it's not nearly as accurate because little elements get lost along the way. So if these people are standing that close and that's that short of a sentence and that message changes that much, you can only imagine what you're getting from the community.
Yeah. Not
to say that the community doesn't have good information out there, but it's got to be like conditional, and of course, this is the right turbo if, then,
right,
when, you know what I mean? So that's why you need to invest in working with a proper strategic ally. And I'm not saying that, Boostin Performance is the only one out there, because based on your location, everything has to, work for you. But like using them as an example in the Midwest area, especially, that's who I would highly recommend.
Yeah. All right. So Ben, we talked about your next goals and the goals for 2023. I want to talk about your long-term goals with this car. Is the goal from now on, for the foreseeable future, just to get out there and compete, or do you have a number in mind that you want to hit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to move up that list. I'd like to be in the top 5 and, go for the number 1 spot, just like anyone else that's close to it. There's no beating around the bush that once you're up there, you want to keep moving forward.
Right.
But that's something that will come in time. You got to be patient with it. You got to respect the process. And for right now, I'll be happy to be competitive out there. And hopefully the car will surprise me at a point where I'm not expecting it. But we will push it to try and better our time and move up that list. Definitely at the right times throughout next year.
Love that. So Ben, we've talked a lot about competing in 2023, and the ultimate goal is World Cup finals for next year. What events can we for sure go out and see this car in action in 2023?
We're definitely going to be at the shootout for sure. Aside from World Cup, which is a goal that we still need to make happen, we'll definitely be hitting some street car takeover events. Import Face-Off is another one that has some events that we'll probably travel to. We'll see about FL2K next year. It all just depends on where things are at around that time of year. But those are definitely a few events you can expect to see us at next year.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Well, Ben, where can people keep track of your build and of your competing for 2023? What social medias can they find you on?
They can find me or look up Hochman Fabrication and Speed on Instagram or Facebook. Those are the two social media platforms that we use most. Every once in a while, we'll post a video to YouTube. If they ever want to reach out to us, they can always check out our website, which is Hochman Fabrication Speed. There's no and in the middle, .com. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or need any help or guidance through any of those platforms.
Heck yeah. Well, Ben, I always give people a chance at the end to give a shout out or a thanks to anyone who's helped them get where they are, get their car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, I definitely got to give a shout out to my wife, Marnie, because she's the rock that helps keep me sturdy, and she's behind me on everything. So she carries all the weight on a lot of the stuff that I would normally be doing, and if I'm not around, then she's handling it. So I've got to shout out to her for sure. And, she's really been the driving force behind a lot of the things with this car. So without her, none of this would be possible. So we all have her to thank for that.
Heck yeah.
Definitely my team, because they're always behind me. And one of the reasons that this car ran the time that it did this year, it takes a village to run this thing. And without them, like I said, none of this would have been possible. So I've got to thank my team. You heard me mention Boostin Performance. I've got to thank them, Devin, Kristen, the rest of the team, Andrew, Joey. You guys have all helped tremendously along the way, and been a crucial resource and trusted ally throughout this whole process, and continue to do so. PPG, of course, them being a partner on this build with the drivetrain, along with Quartermaster. We're running their triple disc. Jeff's the man over there at Quartermaster and always has our back. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without him, of course. John over at Team RIP Engineering, he's the man. As everybody knows, he's a legend. The rear end and drivetrain stuff that he's done for us is legendary. He built the transfer case on this car as well. Robert and Amber over at Force Performance and Zona and Tile and the whole team, they've been crucial on this build, and one of the first allies that I made, even back in the Subaru days. They've been supporting me for a very long time. I've got to thank Daniel over at Evo Spec Performance. He's been a really big friend and partner on this build, all the titanium billet stuff that he's helped us out with. Definitely Jason Flesher, Angry Arrow. We're sporting his parts on our car.
Heck yeah.
He's been a part of the team since day one. Vibrant Performance, of course. Haltech, Carbonetics Carbon Fiber. Car's outfitted with their doors and all the carbon fiber goodies that they offer. Carbon headlight deletes, carbon dash, carbon side skirts. The guys over at Drive Shaft Shop, thank you, Lee, for everything you do. Kigley Racing, Kevin and Aaron over there have been awesome. Machine Concepts, thank you, Albert, for all you do. And, of course, Travis Yoler, he built the harness on this car. And, honestly, he has really done a lot for me over the last year, and one of the reasons that we've been able to get through the woods on this thing. As you can imagine, when you have a lot of issues that come up with electrical in past builds or past phases, you learn that you need somebody that you can rely on and you can trust, and Travis has been that person. So definitely want to thank him as well. And that's the team of people that are behind this thing.
All right, it's definitely a village then.
Yep, absolutely is.
All right, Ben. Well, I wanted to say, thank you for coming on as a sponsor. It's an absolute honor to rock the Hochman Fabrication and Speed logo on the homepage. You're allowing me to do so much for 2023, and I hope that we can really rock 2023 and make it the best one yet.
Absolutely, man. Well, yeah, nothing else I can do but try and help support people and brands like yourself and MitsuTimes that are doing positive things for the community and for the racers. So,
thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, Ben. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to see you in person at some of these events for 2023.
Yeah, we'll catch you there.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.